I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, there's been a few articles in the news of late about the NDP government contemplating or thinking about removing rental restrictions on stratas. Now, quick synopsis here, anything built after 2010 does not have any rental restrictions. So this is going to be affected mostly a lot on older stratas, but there are many stratas, condos, that either do not allow rentals at all or have a cap on the number of rentals that they will allow. In other words, I've got some complexes I know of that only allow as little as 5%. If they've got 100 units, they only allow 5 to be rented at any given time. Now, you see, the NDP government has painted themselves in a bit of a corner here with this BC speculation tax. Even though, as I've said many times before, we've always had a BC speculation tax. It's called capital gains tax. This is really just a wealth tax or an empty homes or an envy tax, really. Let's be real with this. But the NDP has painted themselves in a bit of a corner here. They have thousands of units that are owned, that owners are only using these units part-time, half the time, or letting friends, family use it. It could be a pied-à-terre in downtown Vancouver. It could be a waterfront unit in Steveston. So they're not being occupied 6 months or more. But the problem is that they cannot rent these units out even if they wanted to, because the strata will not allow rentals. Now, I have a client like this myself. I sold my client a waterfront condo in Steveston about 6 years ago. She was born and raised in Richmond. She now lives in the US. They bought a beautiful waterfront condo that her and her husband and her family use throughout the year. They come up here 4 or 5 times a year. They also let some other friends use it from time to time. But it is not being occupied more than 6 months out of the year. Now, for right now, they are exempt until next year. And this is where this is going to get interesting. They either are going to the NDP is going to either have to exempt these people permanently, because the strata right now only allows 10% to be rented. The all 10 are currently rented, the 10%, and there's a waiting list. So my client cannot rent this unit even if she wanted to. So I guess the talk is now is, what is the NDP going to do? It sounds to me like they are in the process of bringing down legislation that will forbid rental restrictions, because I'm already aware that they have been sending out questionnaires to a number of property managers in some of the big stratas, asking them to answer this questionnaire. And it's about 20 questions asking, do you know of any empty units in your building? How do you feel about rental restrictions? Are you for it or against it, etc.? So they're already putting out feelers right now. And we'll see where this goes later this year. Now, I've done many blogs here on rental restrictions and how I feel about them. And it is a very mixed bag here when you talk to people about rental restrictions. A lot of people love them. The building I live in, we allow rentals, but it's capped, it's pretty low. I know that a lot of the owners in here, they don't want too many rentals, and I can totally understand that. From a business perspective, I often tell people that, rental restrictions probably do restrict your prices a little bit, because of course you're now limiting who can buy that unit. Your investors now cannot purchase a unit. When you're bringing down your potential buyer pool by 20 or 30%, the prices are going to be affected a little bit from it. So there are pros and cons to it. I've done many blogs on it. The pros are, of course, is that I tend to put my clients into condos that do allow rentals. And when you're dealing with downtown Vancouver, there aren't a lot of buildings downtown that have rental restrictions. There are some of the older buildings, but most of the downtown concrete high-rises, it's unlimited rentals. And I find that the number kind of sits, if you just let it go naturally, if someone's able to rent or not rent, most of the stratas downtown tend to hit around 50-50. 50% owner-occupied, 50% investors, and I think that's a pretty good mix. But I tell my clients, kind of want to aim you into a building that allows rentals, even if you have no intention of renting that unit. You're going to live in it as a principal residence, because things can change. You could get a job transfer, have to move back east. The market is terrible. It's a strong buyer's market. You don't want to put it on the market and have to settle for less than what you think it's worth. No problem. Let's put a tenant in it for a year or two, move back east. When the market recovers, which it always does, we'll sell it then. So it gives you a plan B, even if you don't, when you're buying it, you have no plans of renting it. Now, and again, of course, that it allows the full spectrum of potential buyers, principal residence owners as well as investors. And remember, investors make up a big portion of the buyers, especially when it comes to one-bedroom units. I'd say in downtown Vancouver, it's probably 30 or 40% are investor buyers on the one bedrooms. 2 bedrooms, much less. 3 bedrooms and townhomes, much less. Detached homes, very little. But the one-bedroom condo market is made up a lot of investor buyers, for sure. Now, the cons, of course, and I can totally understand, strata councils say that, absentee owners, they don't vote on things, they don't show up at AGMs. You've got much more coming and going out of the building, move-ins and move-outs with tenants. They'll say that tenants, aren't as responsible as owners. They don't take care of things as well. That one, I think, is a bit of a myth myself. I think tenants, in my experience, take care of a building and a place every bit as well as an owner does. There's always bad apples, for sure. You're going to get a tenant who's a partier and loud music all night and friends coming and going. But you get owners like that as well, especially when you're dealing in downtown. I find we're not talking about tenants that are paying $650 a month here. These tenants, if they're living downtown, are paying $2,000, $2,100, $2,200, $2,300 a month for a one-bedroom and well over $3,000 a month for a two-bedroom. So they are pulling down good income. Generally, they are professionals, upstanding citizens that are renting these downtown units. As you go out further out to the suburbs, hey, maybe the demographic is a little bit bigger. But this will be interesting to see. NDP government now, with this empty homes tax, BC speculation tax, NV tax, whatever you want to call it, they've got several thousand units easily in the lower mainland right now that are not occupied for more than 6 months, but there are strata restrictions on being able to rent it. Now, if they do remove the rental restriction, that will could put several thousand new units on the market on Craigslist, which would probably help the rental supply here a little bit. We'll have to see. A couple other quick topics I'll talk about. Some people sent me emails here asking my thoughts on the City of Vancouver transferring a slight reduction from the commercial property taxes and transferring it over to the residential market. So they're going to give the commercial property owners a 2% break on their incredibly high property taxes they pay, and of course they won't eat it. Let's transfer it on to the fat cat residential owners. And this is just another example of why I've been saying for years that the City of Vancouver speaks with forked tongue. They always say that they want to do something about affordable housing, make homes more affordable for Vancouverites, and then they do something like this. Now, I feel for the business owners in Vancouver. They are paying an incredibly high tax rate. And this is why you see a lot of these small independent businesses closing up shop. It's the property tax burden they've got to pay. This is why you see so many of these stores empty on Robson Street. They are paying a tremendous amount, way more than we pay in residential. And something should be done about it, and I think more than a 2% break. But of course, the city couldn't just eat that 2% break. They couldn't do it by maybe cutting some staff, saving some money here or there, looking for some cost cutting. No, they had to transfer it directly over to the residential owner, myself. Now, again, they speak with forked tongue because guess where this 2% increase and where the standard 3, 4, 5% increase I get every year on my property taxes is going to go? It's going to go right on to my tenants. Maybe not immediately, but most landlords are going to pass this right on to the tenant in the form of increased rents. Now, of course, they put a cap now on what we can increase every year while the existing tenant is in there. 2.5%, used to be 4.5%. We were fine with 4.5% for the last 2 decades, or whatever the CPI was plus 2%. But NDP government didn't think that was good enough, and they took it down to 2.5, which is crazy because my expenses, and anyone who owns a home here, whether it's a principal residence or an investment property, can tell you that our costs are going up much more than 2.5%. Property taxes now, with this increase next year, are going to go up 5-6% right there. My insurance is averaging double digits. Maintenance fees, everything is going up more than 2.5%. But it's a classic example of the City of Vancouver. They'll pass it on to the residential homeowner or investor, and that will just get passed on to the tenant. I'm under the belief, I know some people will applaud these increased taxes. I don't get it. I think we're taxed to death here, but that's just my opinion. I'm Owen Bigland. Oh, final thing I'll say too. Just wanted to give you guys just every month us realtors get a kind of a State of the Union address from our Vancouver Real Estate Board president. And we've got a new president. Her name is Ashley Smith. And I really like this woman. Very smart young lady. She's very well spoken. So we've got a new president. Our past president, Phil Moore, was very good as well. But we get a nice little email here every month, just kind of on the state of the Vancouver real estate market. And we know that the market right now is down. Sales are way down, 35%. Inventory is still kind of creeping up. Although I'll tell you on that front, if you're looking for a good one-bedroom condo, a good one, the prime ones that I like to sell, it's still a bit of a waiting game. They're not a dime a dozen. There's not that many out there. You can buy a dog unit for sure. There's plenty of those. But sales are way down. But let me just give you kind of her little synopsis here of where the market is right now. Last month's sales were 40% below the 10-year average. She says that, housing demand today isn't aligned with our growing economy and low unemployment rates. The market trends we're seeing right now are largely policy-induced. For the past 3 years, government at all levels have imposed new taxes and borrowing requirements on the housing market. What the policymakers are failing to recognize is that the demand-side measures don't eliminate demand. They sideline potential home buyers in the short term. That demand is ultimately satisfied down the line because shelter needs don't go away. Using public policy to delay local demand in the housing market just feeds more disruptive cycles. And that's been well documented in our region over the past decade. So I agree 100%. I think that sums it up quite well. I heard one guy on the news on a phone-in show kind of saying that what's going on right now with our current tax environment and government and what they're doing with the Tenancy Act and restricting how much we can raise rent and all these things, it's kind of like just trying to hold an overinflated balloon underwater. And that's really all it's doing. And what I've talked about before, when the market does turn and governments come and go, sentiment comes back, it's a bit of a coiled spring effect, and how it might make the matters worse, because instead of building more homes and increasing our supply, we're actually going the wrong way. At that Urban Land Institute conference last year, they tell us that earlier this year we should be building about 24,000 new homes annually in the Lower Mainland. We're only going to be building 17,000 here. And that number is through till 2021. The numbers beyond that, with the way it's looking right now and developers on the sidelines, are going to be far below that. So we're going to be caught with our pants down. Demand isn't going away. But that's what our current governments need to realize. People want to live in Vancouver. They're going to make it happen. Demand is going to keep growing. Supply is limited, and we're not making any more. We're not building any more land. We need to be building more supply, and I don't think we're doing it at a quick enough pace. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.